Sabah, what's the real reason for the NATO intervention in Libya, in your opinion?
It's quite obvious actually that the Arab uprising, and as far as the West is concerned, is an opportunity to contain what's happening in the Middle East, the Arab revolutions, the Arab uprising, and for their own advantages. The West in general used a few issues to intervene in the Middle East. One of them was the fight against terrorism, weapon of mass destruction, and now the struggle for democracy and human rights in the Middle East also being utilized by the West to intervene. And what we've seen in Libya, after having supporting the Libyan regime and Muammar Gaddafi for such a long time, now we see the same countries who supported the regime are coming with their military force, NATO force, and doing what they do in Libya. Perhaps it's a good idea to start by saying that the Arab Spring uprisings happened because of three major reasons. One of them, political repression. These regimes have been in power for over 30 years. In the Libyan case, it's more than 40 years. And they suppressed the people, and it is not democratic. And they went beyond that, actually, beyond repression, because the regimes become inheritance regimes. They become more monarchist than the monarchies, and these are supposed to be a republic. This is a case in Libya. He was grooming his sons to take over. This is the case in Syria, for example. Egypt, we know that he was grooming his son. Yemen also, and we have the other statelets in the Gulf states, which is ruled by families for many years. The second important question is the economy. Most of the countries in the Middle East are very rich countries, potentially very rich country, could easily support its people. But we have such very corrupt regimes, which very small minority in control of the economic activities, and the wealth of the nations being squandered and stolen by these small percentage of elites as well. If I give you one example, for example, in Egypt, which is the biggest Arab country, we find more than 40% of the population live below the poverty line, where unemployment is very high, particularly among the young people. That's why you find the young people took a major part in the uprising that's taking place in the Arab world. And also commodities very expensive as well. People find it a struggle to live on a daily basis. For example, the average wage of Egyptian worker in the private sector, which is the majority of people employed in the private sector, they earn less than $200 a month, which is quite clearly not enough, considering that average family members in Egypt is 4. And you have the situation across the Arab world. It's not just Egypt. This is one example. In Tunisia as well, we all know how the Tunisian revolutions happened. This fruit seller, who is a graduate young man, being suppressed so much, he's prevented from selling his products and so on. He had to burn himself and commit suicide, basically, in protest against the regime there. This is how the Tunisian revolution was ignited in the first place. This is despite actually by Western commentators to cloud the thinking regarding this. I mean, I know of one particular American commentator, well-known commentator, who says the reasons for the Arab uprisings is that the Google Earth and Facebook played a major role in that, which is not the suffering of the people under this repressive regime and the dire economic situation they are in. The third major reason is that most of the Arab regimes are part and parcel of the Western plan and Western policy. They support the Western policy in the Middle East in regard to a lot of important issues with the Arab world thinks are important as well. Like the cause of Palestine, the relationship with the resistance in the Arab world against the American plan and against the Zionist plan, Israeli plan in regard to the Palestinians and the so-called New Middle East, which was projected by Condoleezza Rice and successive American policy, which is basically in control of in the Middle East. So there is a genuine demand for change in the Middle East, but the United States and its European allies have a different idea. They utilize this to get involved in the Middle East, to control the Middle East as well. And you could almost see the blueprint for such intervention. For example, Libya. You asked me about Libya. What's happening in Libya, you could see what's going to happen. They're going to say, well, we are going to create a democracy in the Middle East, like they said they are going to create democracy in Iraq, and we've seen how shambled that was. And they will play on the division within Libyan society and variation within Libyan society to create division, permanent division, because that will be easier to control in the Middle East than if it's united, the kind of things. They will create a weak system where they could manipulate all the time. They will let the multinational companies control the Libyan economy as well and create division in Libya as well. And Libya is very rich in oil. And so basically now NATO and the United States Army are in direct control of the Iraqi oil and the Libyan oil as well. You heard Sarkozy say that what's happening in Libya is the biggest investment we ever done anywhere else as well. So for this investment, so-called investment, they expected a return on that investment, and the return is oil from Libya and other economic interest in the Middle East as well.
Can you say something about the wider NATO or Western strategy across the Middle East?
Anything the West could bring to our area is bound to be linked with dominance, with the economic exploitation of our resources as well. So the true democratic forces in the Middle East always been anti-imperialist at the same time. That's why it's important to support the democratic movement in the Middle East, but without asking the West to intervene. If you look at the history, how many democratic regimes was helped with the help of the Western power in the Arab world. In fact, no examples whatsoever that the Western powers actually supported democracy and the quest for democracy in the Middle East. They talk about democracy in the Middle East and respect for human rights, but at the same time, the Palestinian people have been subjected to the most outrageous policy for 63 years, for example. So, I mean, you associate all the Arab dictators and you'll find they're strongly linked with Western powers and Western support. Who's arming our dictators? Who is financing our dictators? Who is giving them platform? Who is giving them sanctuaries when they are toppled as well? You find that these people have groomed and supported the Saudi regimes. Nobody can claim that the Saudi regime is a democratic in the least. Yet we see the Saudi regimes playing very important role as part of the Western intervention, whether it's in regard to Yemen, Bahrain. They send their army to Bahrain with the Gulf Cooperation Council armies as well. They intervene. The two occasions when the Saudi army, this army has been billions of dollars being spent on it. The two occasions when the Saudi army was used was against the Houthis in Yemen and then against the Bahraini people in their intifada as well. And these are part and parcel of Western plan to utilize the reactionary Arab regimes, the backward Arab regime, anti-democratic Arab regimes to implement their policy in the Middle East. So any claim that the American and European country intervention in the Middle East is for the sake of democracy and human rights doesn't wash with us at all.
What's your attitude and your understanding of the nature of the new government in Libya?
I think the crucial mistakes by the Libyan oppositions, it was similar to that of the Iraqi oppositions at the time of Saddam Hussein, is that quite a substantial number of them allied themselves with the Western intervention in their own country. But I have no doubt that the Libyan people, if they stood by their principled stand against Western intervention in the area, they would have been successful later on. So the people in the Middle East, and we have an example in Egypt and Tunisia and elsewhere, in Bahrain and Yemen, are capable of ousting their dictators, and without the help of NATO forces as well. It might take longer, but at least you lay the foundation of a better kind of society in the future. Because once you get the Western power and their armies into the Middle East, it will be a disaster. In fact, in Iraq, we've seen the consequences of the occupation and the wars that was undertaken. Iraq is ruined, basically. Millions of people lost their lives. The Iraqi economy is looted. We have a political system which is based on sectarianism and division. Iraq is a very weak state, and it will take a long time to recover from that. So we don't want that repeated in the Middle East. And I think it's very important actually to maintain our positions, that we are with the democratic changes in the Middle East. Now it's shaking the Middle East, but at the same time, we very much oppose Western intervention in the area, whether it's military or political intervention in the area, because at the end of the day, it will not be in our advantage.
What's your message to people in Britain? What do you think is the best thing that people here can do to provide solidarity with the democracy movements and to oppose intervention?
We believe that actually the best help the British people could do for the people of the Middle East is to put pressure on the British government not to get involved militarily or politically in the Middle East. The only thing we ask them to do actually to refrain from supporting the oppressors in the Middle East, the Arab regime, the Saudi regime, and the Gulf regime. They are the only things we ask from the British government and Western governments. Otherwise, we let the people of the Middle East decide their own future. I think the message from the Stop the War coalition is very clear and very important, is that we don't want the British government to get involved militarily. We want the people in the Middle East to decide their own future, and we will oppose any kind of intervention, like we oppose the intervention in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and we oppose the intervention by NATO in the affairs of Libya, and possible intervention in Bahrain and Yemen. We take this opportunity to ask everyone who supported in the past and new people to participate in Trafalgar Square with us on the 8th of October, to say no to intervention, to say no to support given to reactionary Arab regimes by the British government and European governments. For example, the training of Bahraini security forces, the intervention there, and so on. So this message has to be repeated, and I think the positions of the Stop the War regarding intervention is a very honorable one and should be maintained.